Hello. Today I'm gonna show you how to find the best camera settings for you. For whatever kind of playstyle you're looking for, well, there's camera settings for you. Competitive, freestyle, specific mechanics, there is one. So I'll show you that today. So the first setting that we're gonna look at is the FOV. This is more of an aesthetic setting. The more you decrease this, the more it feels like you're going slower. So let me show you. If I decrease this, look at how slow it feels like it's going. So the more you can see in your surroundings, the faster you will feel like you're going. So I wouldn't really go underneath 107, 106. I would probably go beyond that. The max you can get 110, so that's what I choose. And then there are two settings. So the first setting is the distance. And the distance is really just how far away the camera is. Usually people have around 260, 280. That's usually what I see people use whenever I'm coaching. 300, that's very rare, but usually around those values. Now, the other setting that people don't ever touch and is directly related to the distance is the stiffness. So say you have one stiffness, the camera will be fully locked into you. Once I land on the ground, then you'll notice how it stiffens up and it just transitions into the right place straight away. No transition at all, no smooth transition. This doesn't happen for walls, but for the ground it is. And I don't really like that aesthetically, so what I recommend is going underneath 0.70. Now with 0.70 it's still pretty stiff, so I don't really like that. Now what freestylers do usually is go for very low stiffness. So I use 0 stiffness, or in between 0 and 0.30. That's what usually freestylers use. But now as I decrease that, what you notice is that the faster I go, the more distance there will be between my car and the camera. Because of this, I'll actually decrease my distance when I decrease my stiffness. So say I use 0 stiffness and I usually use 270, then I would decrease my distance to maybe 230. I would never really go below 210. It starts to get a little bit too close to the camera in my opinion. And I wouldn't really recommend separating the two too far. So I wouldn't recommend low stiffness with a very far away camera setting, just because then as you go faster, it's just a little ant on the screen. And I mean, it's not very good to have that. So I just prefer, as I increase my distance, I also increase my stiffness, and the highest I go on stiffness is 0.70 ever. If you go anything beyond that, I don't think it looks aesthetic. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So now let's get into height and angle. So the height is very straightforward. Of course, you're a little bit higher on your camera, but the thing that matters when changing the height is actually how smooth or snappy you want your resets on the ball to be. And I'll show you very quickly. So let's say we have a very high camera setting, and there's something that a lot of people do. And many people don't understand why the resets are so hard to get. And it's sometimes because with such high camera settings, you get this insanely snappy camera settings. And you can see that I get so much camera shape. It would be almost impossible for me to get resets if I didn't have so much muscle memory built up. So it's important to have low enough camera settings. So as you go down and down, you'll start to see it's still snappy in 110, but it's doable. It's not bad. So it's snappy, but that's usually what most competitive players use because they're not usually doing many resets. And now let's actually get into lower camera settings, and the lower you go, the less snappy it will get. 100, it's still snappy, but it's not super snappy, so it's just a good midpoint between competitive camera settings and freestyle camera settings. So that's okay. But now we get into 90 height, and 90 height is where resets start to get really smooth. And this is a secret that not many people know. When you get to 90 height, resets start to be very smooth. So yeah, there you go. Some people don't know this, and maybe now you know. with 90 height, you'll get way smoother resets. And anything lower than that, of course, will be lower. Now, the thing is, you'll maybe think right now, well, Maktuf, just get the lowest camera settings possible. But of course, whenever you do that, first of all, the only thing visible on the screen is the butt of your car, and you don't really want that. And the second thing is that whenever you're going for an air dribble, now you'll notice that even if I'm going for a normal air dribble, I'm looking all the time at the sky. And I really have no clear visible thing in front of me. I'm not really aiming forwards, I'm just looking up at the sky. And that is good for longer dribbles, for example. If I want to get a longer dribble, it's good to have this kind of camera angle. And it's way easier to get. Now, the bad thing about it is that it's not aesthetic at all. So I don't like it. I just don't like it. So I have to balance it out a little bit and go higher, and that's fine. One thing you can do if you really want these types of camera settings is you can also decrease the angle of your camera. The more you decrease it, now you'll start to see what this will do is this will kind of counteract the lower camera settings. So as you go for resets, they will be really smooth, but you'll also be pointing down a little bit more. So that's great. And that's really good. The bad thing about this is that the aesthetics are not as good, but it's still a good counter to having lower camera settings, and that's fine. But I just try to find a balance myself. I just prefer going in between 90, 100. Sometimes I go into 110, but I don't really like it too much because of too much snappiness, so that's fine. And so the lower you go, say you're here with -4, then 90, I just decrease to -6 because it makes up for that a little bit. So there we go. Now, there is something a little bit important that you have to know, and that is that if you have low camera settings and you also have very far away camera settings, what happens is that even if you have a moderate stiffness, what will happen is that they may look good on the ground, but as soon as you go in the air, the camera will move a lot. So it's basically doing this. And so you don't really want that because you don't want too much camera movement. You want always the smoothest camera movement possible so that your clips and everything you do in the game is as aesthetic as it can possibly be. So you'll notice that as I go up, back, you can see how the camera just moves up and down so much because it's so far away. So you also want to find a balance for that. So for that, I just use a little bit lower and a moderate height. And so that's really it. That's all you need to know. Swivel speed is basically how fast your camera moves when you're moving your stick. And I like to have somewhat slow settings for this. So say like 1.5 is slow enough for me because I like to actually look at whatever is in front of me. So if a player is right in front of me, I like to actually have time to actually look. If that's too high, then I will transition instantly down. And I don't really like that because then if I have a player in front, I can't really see that. Then transition speed is basically how fast it switches from car cam to ball cam. And this is very simple, it's just aesthetics. So if you want a very smooth transition, then you would go with 1. And it's just kind of the most basic transition, the one that most players use. And a lot of freestylers actually like to use a little bit of a higher transition speed because it just looks way faster. And that's also perfectly fine. And it looks aesthetic as well. It's just a faster paced transition of the camera. It's really all about aesthetics when it comes to freestyling. You want shots to look clean. You want to be mechanical, but you want clean movement of your car and also clean movement of your camera. So it's very important to actually find good camera settings that help you do mechanics consistently, but it's also good to actually make your shots look good. Otherwise, nobody ever enjoys your freestyles, and that sucks. Why not enjoy your freestyles yourself as well? So if you're getting into resets, then you would maybe want to switch to lower camera settings and just balance it out. Try to switch little by little. And if you want more competitive settings, then you would want to go for what most pro players use, but it's perfectly fine what you use. It just serves different purposes, it's different aesthetics and different transitions that you're looking for, and it's totally fine. Camera settings give personality to your playstyle, and that's awesome in my opinion. So if you can stick to one camera setting that you really like, I'd suggest you go ahead and change it to whatever you're feeling comfortable with. So that's about it, and I hope you learned something from this video, and good luck in your freestyle journey.